All right, we're now just 3 weeks out, 21 days from the crucial midterm elections, and in one state that could help decide control of the Senate, a new voter ID law is in effect that could disenfranchise tens of thousands of voters. North Dakota's House Bill 1369 revamped the state's voting requirements. The governor signed the new bill into law in 2017. The law didn't create an ID card, but instead listed information that needs to appear on a person's identification so they can vote. The name, a residential address, and a date of birth must all appear on the card. Pretty standard, right? But here's the thing. For North Dakota's native population who live on one of the 5 tribal reservations, there are few, if any, residential addresses. Most people there use post office boxes, which can't be used as a residential address, according to this new bill. And that's to say nothing of the homeless native population who are entitled to vote. Here's what Standing Rock Tribal ID looks like. The cards issued by tribal governments vary depending on the tribe, and some, like in Turtle Mountain, North Dakota, cost $15. It's a sum that might seem negligible, but it could mean the difference between a grocery trip or voting on tribal lands just to get an ID. Voters in this situation are required to give supplemental information, or they can call 911 and try and get a letter certifying their location based on what the 911 operator determines their location to be. But all of this can be a lot to ask for folks who are just trying to make a living 21 days before they have to present all of this to vote. Legal challenges hoping to block the law ended last week because the Supreme Court declined to take up the case, leaving a lower court's ruling to allow the law in place as Democratic Senator Heidi Heitkamp tries to fend off a challenge from Republican Congressman Kevin Cramer. And though the native population makes up just 4% of the state's residents 18 and older, those 23,000 plus potential ballots are going to be crucial. Here's why. In 2012, Heitkamp won her seat by fewer than 3,000 votes. Okay, joining me now is Jenni Monet. She's an independent journalist who covers Native issues. She was arrested while covering the Standing Rock protests in North Dakota last year. Jenni, thank you for joining us. This law, it's surprising to many people that the Supreme Court didn't take it up, seems very specifically designed to disenfranchise tribal members, Native Americans who live on reservations in North Dakota.
That's correct. And this issue isn't new. It's actually was passed in 2013 and has been challenged over that time. The Native American Rights Fund has been leading that fight. And it's remarkable that in this SCOTUS opinion that there were only 2 dissenting opinions that were handed down. And what that tells me is that there's a real gap in terms of understanding the realities on the ground for reservation-based Native Americans. And we're starting to see that across the board, not just with this voter suppression law, but in other fierce legal battles that are challenging tribal sovereignty right now.
Let me ask you to explain to people not from North Dakota who aren't familiar with tribal lands why people there might not have a residential address.
So you have to understand North Dakota to understand the dynamics of this voter suppression law. It's very rural, and in fact, rural for non-natives as well. We know North Dakota to be a very rancher-driven society out there. And for Native Americans, they roughly represent about 65% of the population that live on the reservations. North Dakota is not the whitest state, but it is perhaps one of the most segregated, as I wrote in my reporting from Standing Rock. And I wrote even at that time, in 2016, the implications that this voter suppression law had on voters even then, which was being debated. And at the end of the day, we're talking about political representation that matters, say, for instance, when an infrastructure project like a pipeline wants to go through their lands.
What can tribal leaders do? What are they trying to do? And what actually can be done in the days leading up to what is going to be an unnaturally important election for North Dakota, because the election of or defeat of Heidi Heitkamp may decide which way the Senate goes?
Well, there is definitely a sense of urgency. The Native American Rights Fund is working with the 5 tribes, federally recognized tribes in the state, to get these documented addresses that are now law. You have a lot of grassroots organizations. I think there was one with the 4 Directions who was on Rachel Maddow's show last night talking about the bottom-up campaign that's happening right now across the state. Churches have even joined the fold. And I think the irony is that 911 center across the state. It just spells out the emergency behind this rush 21 days ahead of the election. We're on an eve that I think Justice Ginsburg even said herself, you know, is this going to stir confusion? And I think the answer to that is yes.
Stir confusion in anybody. The idea that you were able to vote in the primaries with your tribal ID and then you can't vote in the election. I think the Supreme Court didn't take it up, but Justice Ginsburg did write that she thought this was dangerous because of the absolute confusion that it would sow. Jenni, thanks very much for your coverage, all the issues that you cover, and for joining us today. Jenni Monet. Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.